Yo, it's your boy Rush. I'm in the building with the Red Pill Pioneer. Mr. Rolo Tomasi himself is in the
Pioneer.
building. Talk to the people, Rolo.
I like pioneer. That's pretty good. I don't think anybody's ever called me a pioneer. Trailblazer. Yeah. I get Godfather quite a bit, but like I don't think I've ever got pioneer. How's it going, man? What's up with you?
Oh man, great, can't complain. I'm just so happy you're in the building today, man. You know, you've been around with this whole red pill movement from the beginning. So my first question to you is like when you distributed your first book, right, on the red pill religion, what do you consider the male that has a like that believes in a higher power a emotional individual? And if you do so, give us the breakdown on why's that.
All right. Well, first off, I've written 5 books. The first one, of course, was The Rational Male, which is like the Bible of the manosphere, I suppose. That came out in 2013. But as far, more to your question there, I wrote a book I published it in 2021, but I took about 3 years to write it, and it was the 4th book, and it was called The Rational Male Religion. And religion was intended for the guys who would always ask me like, hey, Rolo, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm, whatever religion they have, or I'm a Jew, right? I hear what you're saying. I read your book. I read your stuff. I'm 100% on board. I'm part of the male self-improvement sphere, but my religious convictions are such that I have to find a different way to apply this rather than spinning plates or whatever. I'm not looking to get laid. I don't believe in premarital sex, or maybe it's a prearranged marriage, or maybe if they're Muslim, then it's like, well, I'm looking for 3 wives instead of like just 1 wife. So that's why I started writing the book, because I had that question all the time. And so as far as a belief in God, a belief in a higher power, a belief in something that is, let's just say, metaphysical, beyond the physical, I get into that quite a bit in the book. I also sort of, I had to say, predict some things that I kind of warned about that I see coming around right now, especially in this midterm election year with the year of the woman, let's just say.
Right.
And so every time
hold on. I gotta interject real quick. Do you think we moving into a matriarchic? Yeah, I mean, like, you think so?
Okay, so there's a difference between a matriarchy and gynocentrism and a matrilinear society. Okay, so matriarchy means that there's going to be like a queen, right? There's just going to be, it's like matriarchy. I mean, from a technical perspective, it means a government by women for women. And I don't see us ever really becoming a quote unquote matriarchy, at least not in an official sense. But we already right now live under what's known as a gynocentrism or gynocracy.
Right. That's why I kind of brought that up, because on a hypothetical perspective, if Pamela Harris becomes president, do you think we would be living in a matriarch type? No, you don't think so?
No, because you have to look at usually I don't get into topics of like religion or politics or race or any kind of that stuff, like specifically based on those topics. But I do when there's crossover between like intersexual dynamics and religion, or intersexual dynamics and politics, right? I talked about this when Hillary Clinton lost her first bid for the presidency, and now you've got Kamala Harris, who's the vice president, and so the way I look at it right now is it's not necessarily Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, for that matter, are simply just figureheads. They're placeholders for a government that goes on behind whatever it is they're doing. They're just like faces on the screen right now. So, but let's just say, for sake of argument, let's take your hypothesis and say, well, do you think like a woman, let's just say, for example, like maybe Tulsi Gabbard, right, or Kamala Harris or whoever else, could they be a legitimate female president? What I would say is if they were, it would be because the powers that be allow them to be where they're at. So is it really her who's pulling the strings and making decisions, and her who has the authority, or is it her handlers and the people who sort of like who direct her in the direction that they would like her to go. In that case, you got to remember that it's not necessarily a matriarchy so much as it is a gynocentric social order, meaning that it is social initiatives, political initiatives, religious initiatives that are by women for that prioritize the interests of women above all else.
Okay, that's a great answer. Now I want to expound on your thoughts on the male that believes in a higher power is an emotional state. Now, from a Christian theologian, like their perspective is like, hey, you can't rely on your own understanding, and that it's best to allow the ruach to lead you on what's proper, or you know what I mean. That's proper for them to live in a consecrated lifestyle. You know what I mean?
So I hear you in that, and I cover that in my fourth book in religion. Now, a lot of people, when I wrote the fourth book, it's very particular. I wrote it for, technically I wrote it for a religious audience, but when I first put it out there, I made sure that I cover my bases in the introduction of the book. And what I said, look, I'm not shitting on anybody's particular religion, right? But I'm also not like trying to say it's a religious book or it's an atheist book. It's just an analytical approach from a gender specific, intersexual dynamic specific perspective, right? So right. I mentioned this. I said, if you're a religious reader and you think that I'm writing this book to sort of like reinforce or back up your belief set, you're going to be disappointed. And then I also said, if you're an atheist and you think that I'm writing this book to sort of back up your points, you're going to be disappointed as well, because it's just simply an analytical approach to all this. So with that in mind, do I think that I can show you studies right now that will show you that like religiosity is the thought pattern or the emotional pattern is very feminine, very female like. However,
Okay, I want to kind of expound on that too, real quick. Like, as far as somebody having that religious belief that it's now the reason why you would think it's like from a dynamic from a female's attribute is because it's in a emotional state.
Like, let me see if I can find this. I've got some good research. Religiosity. Here it is. Religiosity is associated with a more feminine intelligence profile in men. Now, this is from a January 21st, 2021 study. And many studies have found that a small negative correlation between religiousness and intelligence measured by IQ tests, and many others have found that females are more religious than males. Other studies have demonstrated that the IQ profile of females is different from that of males, with females tending to be higher than males in some abilities and lower in others. This raises an intriguing question of whether religiousness may be correlated with a more stereotypically female intelligence profile. They tested whether this is the case, let's see, religiousness using the proxy of a regular church attendance is not only higher amongst females, but is also associated with the female profile of abilities even amongst the males. In particular, we found that males score higher than females on mechanical comprehension and understanding electronics. We argue that this is potentially consistent with the evidence that autism spectrum disorder is negatively associated with religiosity. So they were really doing like autistic spectrum disorder like research for this, but this is what they came up with. In particular, the focus on systemizing at the expense of empathizing are considerably more common in males than females. So essentially what they're saying is that the studies, and I covered these studies also in my fourth book, was that there are more women in church and there are more women in religion now than ever before. And they're in positions of like missionary work. They're in positions of, in the churches that allow it right now. They are in positions of ministry. They're in positions of really organization and logistics. But yet we still cling to this idea that that religion is like patriarchal, when in fact it's really more gynocentric. It's just that we want to. It's convenient to say, well, it's a man's religion and they won't let us do. We're still oppressed, kind of thing. when in fact the statistics and the numbers and the intelligence profiles really point to the fact that women are far more religious than men are.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all right. Yeah, I could see that. I actually understand where you're coming from with that.
I'm not saying that's the way it should be. I'm just saying
Right.
that's what you're finding.
Yeah, but a lot of times the females that attend to these churches, they follow towards the I guess the preacher. Wouldn't the preacher be considered as a patriarch of some sort?
Well, that's again, that's another issue I talk about in my fourth book, is that it's not necessarily who's giving the sermon, but who is determining what that sermon is going to be in the first place. So and again, this is something that's sort of come to fruition, let's just say in the internet age. When a pastor, or I'm speaking from an evangelical Protestant Christian perspective here, but I mean, you can also apply this to other religions. But when a pastor has a blog and a pastor is trying to sort of shepherd a church that is also a commercial enterprise, he still has to appeal to the people who are in the pews, and the most people who are in the pews are going to be women. So does that influence his choice of message on a Sunday morning? What's going to appeal to a bigger audience? If the guy goes up there and says, "Hey, ladies, you really need to submit to your husbands, and here's where it says in the Bible that you will, you'll submit to your husband's authority, and here it is right here." That's going to be a less popular sermon than, say, something that is more based on, "Hey, men, you need to man up and you need to do better." That's going to be a more popular sermon, simply because the demographic is that there's more women in church than there are men in church. So if you want to survive, if you want to get those tithe checks to keep coming in, how is that going to sort of color the way that pastor or that minister or whatever is going to deliver a sermon, or what even the topic is going to be at that time, so in order to sort of like, to be more, let's say, commercially viable, because that's what churches are, unfortunately, today in Western societies. And of course, more and more people are just abandoning the church as it is. Right. But I think half of the reason that that happens is because it's more and more females who are part of the church, and there are very few men in church these days. Period.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like I haven't stepped into church in a while, Mm. And, I feel if I did walk into a church, I'd probably burn.
Well, there's really nothing for. I joked about this too. I said, there's really nothing for men in the modern day church. If anything, it's actively hostile towards anything that's conventionally masculine. And the reason for that is because secular feminism and secular gynocentrism is something that has sort of seeped into really all religions. Is I make the case for all religions, but like Christianity, it's very easy to see because that was the first one to go. And the reason for that is because to be more commercially appealing and more commercially viable, they had to adopt and sort of Christianize or make Christian kosher certain secular ideas that are popular with women, and therefore women will go to the church and they'll sit there on Sundays and they'll take their husband's paychecks and tithe 10% of it because that's where they want to be. And as a result, again, it's even if it's not women up there giving the sermon, it's still women determining the direction and the course of that church by voting really with their tithe checks.
Right, and I agree with you on that. Because I don't want to say the people that's attending the congregation are consumers, but I'm just going to use that word for conversation's sake. Like the consumers determine on what's the message going to be out. You know what I mean? Yes. And you're right. That has been some type of compromise because of that. Because majority of people that's attending these congregations are females, So yeah, there is some type of
I wish it were different. I do. Like, I think a lot of people think that I'm like when I bring up that topic, I've brought this topic up on several different shows, but I one of the things I'm never really allowed to explain is like, I don't think that's the right way to do it. By the way, I think that like religion, particularly your relationship with God and your relationship with your, a higher power, whatever you call God, metaphysically, that should be a very personal decision, right? I mean, that's something that's like, you're going to have to deal with like most of your life until the day you die. Right. And right. So it's not that I think that it's, oh, hey, I'm glad that this is happening. No, if anything, I wish it was different than that. I wish more men were more religious, but there's simply nothing for them to get into. There's nothing for them right now. And so I deal with guys online, like these guys who will come into the manosphere, right? And they're very religious, or like Ruslan, or these guys from Iron Disciples, and some I've dealt with the guys from Warhorn and some other dudes. And what they are is they're ministers, they're pastors who look around the church and they go, "Where are all the men?" And then they go, "Oh, the men are listening to Rolo Tomasi. The men are in the men are in the red pill space right now. Let's go over there and make the red pill our personal ministry." And then they sort of lock horns with me, and they want to.
Why is that though? Why is it that they divest from their religion that they grew up on, and to come to see people like you, Fresh and Fit, other content creators that expound on a red pill perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, because we have something for men. We have something that they don't get in church. And it's not, oh, well, I want to get laid. It's that we have something here, that we have a conversation here where men are not run up the flagpole for being conventionally masculine. With the things that women in particular would call toxic masculinity are the same things that keep men out of the church, the ideas of them anyways. So what I always say is this, like, there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is only masculinity, and the aspects of it that are convenient to a female-oriented society and that are inconvenient. So toxic masculinity is like if a guy, like the same masculinity that prompts like those guys on Jackass to go and do like stunts and like, dangerous, stupid shit, right? Is the same masculinity that men rely on when they need somebody to go into a burning building and save a baby from a burning building. So one of those is pro-social, one of those is anti-social. It just depends on how it serves a female imperative. Now take that, put that into a church setting, and you drive away men because they're told that they're toxically masculine for not believing or not being on board with whatever is serving women. Because if mama ain't happy, God ain't happy.
Right.
If that's the case, guys are like, I'm going to go watch Fresh and Fit, because I'm not going to be berated for the masculinity that God put in me in the first place. So that's where they're at. And that's why I think a lot of like, sort of masculinity pastors, I guess, I don't know, it's masculinity doctrine, or was it, what was the one where like Creflo Dollar was like prosperity teaching or something like that?
That's Creflo's main thing is on, teaching prosperity, or how to align yourself within prosperity. But he just recently admitted that that was the wrong teaching, and that there's
they laid the buck short, but yeah,
right. I guess he felt some type of guilt, and now
Yeah. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, you look at like Joyce Myers, and you look at like Beth Moore and some of these other pastors and stuff like that. They were all. There's a lot more. Man, dollars. He's just got an easy name to remember, but
right.
Other guys that were there's a lot, but because it was the hotness during, it was the hotness to preach a sermon on prosperity during like the good times of the mid 2000s, and then suddenly we had the housing crisis and the Big Short, and now suddenly they kind of like bug out of town because all that prosperity teaching is sort of out the window when everybody is like underwater on their mortgages and they're mailing their keys back to the bank. And so
right.
So, now think about this in terms of like gender issues, right? So if you've got these guys who are looking around their churches and they're going, where are all the men? And then they go and they look and they see that they're following Rolo Tomasi or Fresh and Fit or Andrew Tate or whoever else, because that they're like, yeah, there's something here for us. It might not be very religious, and it might be like not, it might not be biblically oriented, but the fact remains is at least there's something there for them, and they're not being berated for toxic masculinity. What happens is those guys then go into those spheres, they go into the red pill, and they try to sort of sanitize them, and they want to pick and pull aspects of the red pill and sort of make them religious. And again, this is something I got into in book 4, but they want to turn it into sort of like their personal ministry. And I'm willing to meet them halfway, but in a lot of times it's just like willful ignorance on their part.
Right, man. I like the way you broke that down. You've been around for like.
I worked on that book for 3 years, man. Say something about it.
Right. Oh, yo, you've been around for about like 20 years, and you've been getting a lot of traction. What was like the first pivotal moment that caused you to get this kind of fame on social media?
Oh, fame. I'm still not famous. What are you talking about? Who's famous?
What?
I'm only famous on the internet. They care about me. They care about my book. They don't care about me as like a personality, I guess.
Right.
I'll tell you what's funny. Here's this will make you laugh. I used to be a moderator in the seduction community of the early 2000s. I used to be a moderator on this forum called So Suave. And there's like 3 really popular forums back then. There was Alt Fast Seduction, which was like the pickup artist community. So Suave was kind of a little bit more, I want to say, intellectual than that, but it was still around and it was still in the seduction community. And then there was like the Rouge V forums and some other ones. But so I got my start in those were the forum years. And then I moved into the blog years, right? So my blog started in 2011, but I have been writing about this kind of stuff really since 2002. So it's about 20 years. And then I started the Rational Male blog in 2011. And then I got into the book years, which is 2013. And that's when I wrote the Rational Male and I published it. And then I did the second book in 2015, and then 2017, I never showed my face anywhere. I didn't even do interviews until 2017. And then the third book came out in July of 2017, and that was Positive Masculinity. And that's when I said, okay, now I'm comfortable enough to think that maybe people would really want to hear what I have to say. So I started doing conventions. I started making public appearances. I didn't even have a YouTube channel until 2018. And then there's the YouTube era. And really, I kind of marked that at about the 2017, like the summer of 2017 is really when I got into Instagram, Twitter. I have an older Twitter account than that, but like that's when I really started using it like on a daily basis and started building out the brand that would become the Rational Male. And so then I started the YouTube channel with my partner, Pat Campbell, who was a terrestrial radio show host in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He passed away from brain cancer last year in October. And but he taught me a lot about broadcasting and how to actually, be at least somewhat entertaining I'm doing this right now. And so he was kind of my mentor in that respect. And he was just a really great guy. So I learned a lot from Pat and I carried it on to doing what I do now. But the pivotal moment, I think, was probably me collaborating for the first time with Pat Campbell. That was definitely a pivotal moment. And then just sort of carrying it on from there. I started doing Fresh and Fit on a regular basis in January of 2021. And all this year, pretty much, I have been on either Fresh and Fit or like Valuetainment, Patrick Bet David and Adam Sosnick. I've been on The Blaze a few times. I've been to various, people want to talk to me all of a sudden, but it's like, Tucker Carlson, I'm still waiting on the call, and nobody from the mainstream, like Piers Morgan. I was just doing the show about Andrew Tate being on Piers Morgan. I'm not getting those calls. Andrew Tate is getting those calls, but Rolo Tomasi's not getting those calls. I think probably because I think I'm a bit too analytical. I don't think I would be, I would be a pretty good interview for them, but I think I would probably tear them to shreds, and I wouldn't give them what they want. And really what the mainstream media wants from the manosphere, from the male self-improvement sphere, whatever the hell we're calling it right now, they want like frothing at the mouth, like assholes. They want guys who are just like easy to hate and crazy. And so I'm not crazy. So when I go and I go on these, I'm very analytical. I'm very like I am right now. I'm telling you, I just read some stats.
Yeah, you're
just a minute ago.
Yeah.
Imagine me doing that on Piers Morgan. Tucker. Hold on, Tucker. I got to study for that. Tucker
Carlson. Speaking of Andrew Tate, right? Why do you think he's been banned from like all social media platforms? Like, what is the world scared of Andrew Tate's message to the young youth?
Big tech is not afraid of Andrew Tate's message. That was just a convenient reason to get rid of him. they're people hate it when I point this out. The reason why Andrew Tate got banned is because he figured out he was the first one to successfully game the YouTube algorithm, meaning that he was the first one to be able to sort of mass spam the impressions and click-through rate and like essentially getting his face out there, like because he spammed it through, not through himself, but through the people who are in Hustlers University. They get a kickback. It's their affiliate marketing. They get a kickback for basically taking his videos and reproducing it on a channel that they start. So they get some money from the kickbacks from that. And essentially what they're doing is they're repurposing his content, or else they're doing derivatives of his content, putting it out there. And so
you're saying that he was competition?
Well, he's not competition, but what he did was it's proof of concept, I should say. Okay. So if you know anything about YouTube, and I point towards YouTube, but this is true for like Instagram and TikTok as well. Mm-hmm. But if you know anything about YouTube, the only thing that really matters on YouTube is not subscription, like subs. It's not about subs. Subs is a vanity metric. The comments, likes. I'm glad you like my video. Please keep liking my videos. But as far as the algorithm is concerned, it has really nothing to do with the algorithm. The only thing that really matters to the YouTube algorithm is impressions and click-through, CTR, click-through rate, and then audience retention too. So what an impression is nobody goes and searches for a video anymore. They look at what their suggested videos are, and usually it's something that they subscribe to. And so from those subscriptions, the algorithm figures maybe you'll like this because it's in, like, you like Manosphere stuff? Here, let's give you some impressions of some other content creators. And you might like these things. It's in suggested videos. So most people don't go into the search engine and go, oh, I want to see Andrew Tate. It usually just pops up in their suggested videos. Most people, by the way, are also watching videos on their cell phones. So they're scrolling through the videos one by one. And so that's what's known as impressions. If it shows up in your feed of suggested videos, it's showing this to you. And then if you click on it, that's click-through rate. So it's impressions, then the click-through rate, and how long do you watch that video after you've clicked through to it. Those are the things that make the algorithm work for YouTube. That's really all they care about, because that's how they determine what a popular video is and what a not popular video is. And that helps them make money with advertising dollars and super chats, and assuming it's a live stream. But that's how they make money off of that. So it's really about impressions, click-through rate, and audience retention. And what Andrew did was he gamed that algorithm by having so many people suggest his video and create more and more of his content that it kept coming up in people's impressions over and over. He had like, I don't know how many, at his peak, I believe he had 120,000 members of Hustlers University. And even if half of those guys were making channels to rebroadcast his content, he essentially owned YouTube and owned the algorithm and spammed YouTube to the point where you couldn't go through your suggested videos, your impressions, without seeing at least one Andrew Tate video. And so therefore it's kind of snowballed from there. That's what big tech was canceling him for, because they don't want other people to repeat that. They don't want people who are like ideologically or politically against whatever the woke agenda is for Google or whoever. That's why he was easy to cancel, because of his content, yes. But the real reason why is because he had so many people gaming the algorithm that you couldn't not see an Andrew Tate. That's how he got on Piers Morgan. That's how he got on Tucker Carlson. That's how he got on all these other huge shows. And we even know what his name is. And by the way, he started it on TikTok, and then he owned YouTube, and then he owned Instagram using the same process. And the reason why he got canceled all on the same week is because there's a collaboration between all of those guys in big tech, and by the way, Stripe and Gumroad and all of his payment processors. He lost all of those within the same 2 or 3 day period. That's how it's not the content, it's the fact that he was able to game the system. That's why he's canceled.
Wow. Mm-hmm. You just gave us free game.
Go forth, make a lot of money. game the system, my friends. I'm giving you free info. But see, it's very difficult to do that. But for Andrew, it's easy because he's very outspoken and he's like a professional wrestler. He's a charismatic guy, so people want to rebroadcast. Like I can't do that because I mean people like me, but they don't like me that much. I do it anyways because I would end up getting canceled too. So.
Yeah, nah, we don't want you to get canceled. We need you around. We need your wisdom.
Well, I'm primarily an author. That's why. Like I do YouTube and I toy with stuff. I'm developing a new show with Mike Sartain in Las Vegas. That's a panel show, but we're not. It's not like we're trying to compete with like Fresh and Fit or anything like that because it's only like a bi-weekly show. We're doing it every other Friday. That's basically it.
Okay.
And that's all I really got time for because I write books too, right? And I do other things, and I'm more about the substance and everything. I joke with the guys on Rule Zero. I said I'm the research and development department for the Manosphere and Red Pill and all that good stuff.
Man, listen, man, the information you've been putting out, man, is good stuff. My other question for you now is on Hector Garcia, right? Like he's the author of the
Alpha God.
Alpha God, right? And his perspective on Abraham is on a scientific perspective, because he tried to create the 12 tribe of Israel, and the only way of doing that is to copulate with multiple females. And his story, like not only I want to ask you about that, but do you feel like living a monogamous lifestyle?
Yeah.
Like, do you think it kind of products us from our natural state to copulate with multiple women, or?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack with that. First of all, I love Dr. Hector Garcia. I think he is a consummate statistician. He's a really great research guy. What Alpha God was really about was Hector Garcia comparing, let's say patriarchal Abrahamic religions, Abrahamic gods, right? With primates, like primate behavior, right? So like an alpha male gorilla versus the alpha male god in the sky, right? And the similarities between like how we show reverence to a male god. We call God he, right? We don't say it, we don't say she, we say he. And a lot of the aspects and characteristics of the Abrahamic patriarchal God coincide with how primates just look at alpha males. It's simply how we do life on planet Earth. And so it's a fantastic book. I would argue that people should really have a read of that, but don't read it from like, oh my God, he's shitting on religion. Oh my God, this is heresy. Look at it from an analytical perspective, because I don't 100% agree with Hector Garcia's final chapter in there, which is he's very anti-masculine. He's very much woke. He's very feminist at the end of the book, but like throughout the rest of the book, he's very research oriented and analytical. It's almost like he's trying to be apologetic at the end of the book because he knows that he's going to ruffle a lot of feathers with it. Right. But as far as the Abrahamic side of things, I brought this up and you'll hear this quite a bit from like Fresh and Fit. You used to hear it from Kevin Samuels. You used to hear it from me actually too. You would hear it from Andrew Tate. A high value man should cheat or should be able to cheat or it deserves to cheat. And I'm on record as saying I don't deal in shoulds, I deal in is. So when I hear Andrew or Myron or Kevin Samuels sort of paraphrase my work where I say, the characteristics of high value men, of powerful men throughout history have involved three things. And those three things are resources, territory, and access to a harem, to virginic, beautiful women that he has exclusive access to. So you'll sometimes hear me say, like, it's very similar to like kings have like their concubines. Even in the Old Testament, Abraham had 2 wives and God knows how many maidservants.
Not only Abraham, but King Solomon too.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like he also had many wives, and he copulated with many different types of women.
Powerful man. And
I want to interject real quick. Sigmund Freud thoughts on sexual repression is the same thing. I mean, he feels like it's the root to our problem because it's a root to our problem because we are forced to kind of like live this this lifestyle of monogamy, and really we don't want that from our natural predatorial instinct.
Well,
I mean,
from a naturalistic perspective, like so, there, you mentioned Dr. Hector Garcia. There's another guy's name is Dr. Tim Burkhead, and he wrote a book called Promiscuity, and it's about basically promiscuity in the animal kingdom. It includes humans, but it also includes lots and lots of other animals and species and stuff as well. So, the natural state of most higher order animals is not monogamy; it is promiscuity. And it serves our genetic interests to be promiscuous. However, as far as human beings are concerned, all of our babies are essentially born with like big heads, and they are born premature by comparison to other species. So, for example, a horse, when a pony is born, it can run usually about 30 minutes after it's been born, so it can get away from predators, and it's not self-sufficient. It still relies on its mother, but it is more self-sufficient than a human baby after 30 minutes, after being born. So for human beings, babies have big heads because we rely on our intelligence, and there's a lot of reproductive investment that goes into the baby. Okay, so. In a sense, monogamy serves the best interests of the species in the sense that a human male and a human female have to input reproductive investment, parental investment into a child. Otherwise, the species dies out because if we walked away from it, it would die. So we have to be monogamous in some way, at least by choice or by inclination. But when we are breeding, we are opportunistic breeders, meaning that we are promiscuous. However, we are monogamous by choice, because if we're not monogamous, then the species dies out. So when people say, well, Rolo, do you think that that promiscuity is the natural state of human beings? I go, yes. And then they say, do you think that monogamy is the natural state of human beings? And I go, yes. It is both, and it doesn't have to necessarily be mutually exclusive. So is one right and one wrong? Well, that's the judgment call. Then you can say best practices after that. But like when it comes to those two things from a scientific analytical perspective, yes, we're both.
Okay. So like, cause from what I took from that is like, being promiscuous allows for humanity to keep living on. I mean, and I agree with that.
It's in animals' best interests to be promiscuous, but certainly to be at least opportunistic breeders, because what happens is then you get mutations that might preserve an organism against, like, say, like a pathogen, like a disease or something like that. Or maybe it's better suited in like one environment versus another environment. So certain opportunistic breeding, let's just say, maybe the animal or the human or whatever does better in cold weather than hot weather because of that, because of promiscuity, essentially.
That's where evolution come to play,
So it's a
lot of body adapts, so you know what I mean.
So when we talk about you will never hear me say this, and I've never said this on any podcast. I've never said high value men should cheat. I don't say that. I say high value men can cheat. I say that's what defines a powerful man. Is he is the guy that other men want to be and other women want to bang. And so does he deserve to cheat? That's a judgment call. What I'm saying is that what defines powerful men throughout the course of history is resources, territory, and access to virginic, beautiful women, exclusive access to virginic, beautiful women, so he can pass on his DNA into the next generation. So what happens then is then you get an Andrew Tate, or you get a Myron and Fresh or whatever, and they go high value, or Kevin Simmons, high value men should cheat. No. They take that and they run with it, and they'll paraphrase me. But I'm not making a judgment call. What I'm saying is this is what is, not what necessarily should or ought to be. So when you bring up like Abraham and being, fathering the tribes of Israel, well, from an Old Testament perspective, it's a good thing that he had access to many beautiful women, because otherwise we wouldn't even be talking about him or the tribes of Israel, because for you to even have the frame of reference for that.
And that's why a lot of
promiscuity part of the Old Testament God's plan, or is it monogamy in the New Testament? So it's just kind of.
Right. Well, I mean, with the Old Testament, the Book of Torah, you know, a lot of the people that practice the Jewish lifestyle or whatever, they might subscribe to that because it's the old school way for them. I mean,
You know, it's funny.
and
You don't see too many. You don't see too many Jews practicing polygamy. You see, definitely Islam.
right. I mean, Judaism.
Do the Amish practice polygamy? I don't know. I don't remember, but you don't see too much of that anymore. And I think honestly, it's really it's a cultural, it's a social change rather than a religious thing. We decide, hey, you know what? It's more beneficial that everybody gets one piece of ass, and we all can like settle the, hey, there's somebody for everybody. It's your soulmate, right? And if we have this sort of popular mythology about like one man, one woman, how can we codify that? Oh, let's put it in religion, and then so that's what we're going to go with now. Whereas in the Old Testament, it was like, well, what works better? Polygamy, because we can spread the religion further with one guy and many tribes of Israel. So it was just whatever was more like sort of, I think, socially expedient at that particular time. Monogamy has been something that we've sort of made the foundation of Western societies forever. But in terms of like human like reproduction, monogamy is something that is sort of almost like that's happened in the blink of an eye. We've been more polygamous than we've been monogamous over the course of like 200,000 years of human history. So the only reason we're really having this conversation, by the way, is because right now women don't need men. And so they want men, but they don't need men because they don't need them for the survival benefits and the security benefits, or at least the perception that they need it. Yeah. And so who do they want? I don't need men. I want a man. Who do they want? They want the hot guy in the foam cannon party. They want an Andrew Tate. And they all feel like they deserve that. So now we see polygamy coming back into the conversation, not because men are like, now I'm going to get a harem. It's because women are like, well, there's only one high value guy or very few of them. And so we have to share them. That's still polygamy. It's just women are initiating it instead of men this time.
Right. Now, my thought, okay, so what are your thoughts on from average to above average females on their aesthetics that seek this, the Andrew Tates and the Myrons and stuff like that? Like, what do you think is the cause of this ripple effect happening in this current time? We live in an age right now, first of all, that we have unprecedented communication. That's number one. The other thing is that right up until about like 2006 or 2007, we were kind of limited to what I call the local sexual marketplace. And what that means, like, for instance, like I'm from Generation X, right? So I graduated high school in 1986. Okay. So only my pool of sexual candidates or women that I could get with was really limited to like how far I could drive, or how, who I knew in my social circles, or who I was going to college with, or if I was, at a club in Hollywood or something like that. I could expand it, but I could only go so far, right? Maybe within 100 miles. Today, we live in a global sexual marketplace. So if you have a cell phone, girls can look at a guy that's in another country and have a communication with that guy, and they believe that they deserve that guy. And so now we've kind of opened up the sexual marketplace on a global scale. And so how does that affect women's expectations and entitlements? And really, that's kind of why we're having the conversation about polygamy these days. But the expectations are through the roof, and like I think wildly unrealistic today, simply because women believe that they have more choice than they actually do. It's what's called the choice paradox. It's like having too many choices sort of like paralyzes you. And that's right. What really has happened, I think, for the last, certainly Generation Z, but also like maybe the latter half of the millennial generation. They have been I would say sexually, selection wise, women have been paralyzed because they believe that they are entitled to the best of the best, but within the reality is that they can't get the best of the best because they believe that they're more valuable than they actually are. So now combine that with the fact that most of these women are overweight, obese, aren't as high quality as they believe they are, but they're constantly 24/7 bombarded with a message that says, you go girl, never settle. You don't need a man.
You can get your own degree, you can get your own business, you can make your own money. You don't need a man. So therefore, if you don't need him, then you can afford to wait for the guy who's like the ideal guy. The problem is again the choice paradox. They wait and wait and wait because they always think that there's going to be another guy or a better guy than the one that's actually trying to pursue them at that time. And so therefore, any time that they actually get involved with a guy in a relationship, it always feels like they're settling, unless that guy is like Andrew Tate or Justin Bieber or has, famous celebrity. And even in those cases, Tom Brady's getting divorced, right?
Yeah.
Aisha Curry, she still wants to have an open relationship. Like, you got Steph Curry. But it doesn't matter. She still wants to be hot on Instagram, right? That's
what I just got a super chat, and this individual has a question for you. And a salute to Elena's Bear.
Beret.
I hope I'm saying. Her question to you is, what happens when the global scale disappears?
We go back to a local sexual marketplace. Assuming that happens, I don't believe that's going to happen in our lifetimes, but like it might. Like tomorrow, suddenly the internet might go down and we lose all connectivity, and women suddenly. Imagine this. Imagine if Instagram suddenly somebody hacked Instagram and they erased everyone's pictures and everyone's profiles, and they basically took down Instagram, and everyone had to restart like after a week. Like, imagine what would happen to like women and even guys too. Imagine what would happen to people's egos, for especially the people who depend on likes and follows. And I've got a million.
I think the suicide ratings will go.
You would see people. You would see women buildings. That's what you would see. But it would force them basically back into a local sexual marketplace. And I don't. Would they get healthy again? I don't necessarily think so, because people would just be waiting until the Instagram 2.0 pops up. But imagine it is like the internet doesn't even have to go down. You could just erase, Instagram or I don't know, TikTok. Imagine if TikTok went down for like someone like Drew Afualo, who has like 7.5 million followers. Sorry, we're erasing all of this. We know you're a very popular influencer, but you're deleted and you have to rebuild. I mean, she might be able to do that. You zero out all of them, like they'd be jumping out a window.
Yeah. I mean, I believe so, man. It's just people are so conditioned to deal with everything through social media, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like they can't live without it.
Well, because what happens is they become their brands. So I mentioned this in my 5th book, actually. It's called Brand Management. And my 5th book is called The Player's Handbook. And the reason why I put that as the very first chapter in there is because people need to understand that in the global sexual marketplace, that you are your own brand. I am my own brand. You're your own brand. If you're a 9-year-old kid on Instagram, you're your own brand. And what that means is that you, even if you're not like trying to do it for money or you're trying to find a girlfriend or whatever, you're still representing yourself as you would as if you were your own. You're the brand of you. You're the personality of you. And so what happens is people tend to evaluate their egos and their self-esteem according to likes and subs and positivity. And so what happens is, or negativity for that matter. And so what happens is they live and die by the likes, and they live and die by the hearts, and they live and die by the subs and the views and everything else, because that lets them know it's a quantifiable way of determining how cool they are, or how good they should feel about themselves, or how bad they should feel about themselves, because their brand is very good, or it's very bad, or whatever. So if you have, Myron Fresh talk about this all the time, the number one dating app on planet Earth is not like Tinder or Hinge or Bumble. It is Instagram. Because the first thing, nobody cares about getting a phone number anymore. They want you.
Right. Well, Instagram is like your public number.
Yeah.
Like people could call you on Instagram and they could video chat you on Instagram. So that's like your public number,
Yeah.
Well, people have so many people in the world have so much access to you if you have a public Instagram,
Mm-hmm. Well, but that's your brand though. So like, for instance, like if you go and you interview for a job, the first thing that potential employer is going to do is go look you up on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And so why wouldn't women or men for that matter go look up whoever they met at a club on Instagram and see if they're cool enough to hang out with? That's brand management. So you have to cultivate and curate your pictures and your Instagram and your social media to maximum effect. Now, what is that effect? Is that to make money? Is that to be an influencer on TikTok? Or is that to get laid? Is that to like find a girlfriend? Is that to find a relationship? In all of those situations, we still rely on the same thing. We look at our likes and our follows, and we look at our members and everything else, and that what determines and quantifies how cool we are and how uncool we are. And that is a very unhealthy way of sort of like of self-esteem. So like Elena was saying, what happens when the global scale disappears? Well, what happens is you lose all your followers, you lose all your likes, you lose all and you're cut adrift. You have no one to tell you how cool you are or how uncool you are. And so you kind of have to like rely on yourself at that point. And then it's like, so who are you?
It would be a humbling experience.
Are you the person, like when I turn off the computer here in a minute, am I Rolo Tomasi, or am I just me going about my day? And I think the line is becoming more and more blurred with every passing year on social media.
Man, that's perfect answer. The man of wisdom. Be careful of becoming your brand. And I've been really critical of guys in the manosphere recently about it. It's one thing to talk about women on TikTok and saying, oh man, she's all brand. But there's a lot of guys that I know in my own sphere that sort of, I knew them when they were like, coming up, and I know them now, and they're more about, they've become their brand. The personality they created for themselves to, push their teachable classes or their books or their videos or their channels or whatever. They become the character that they created for themselves. And so now you can't talk to the man anymore. You can only talk to the brand. And I'm honestly, I think it's kind of dangerous, and I really hate that. And so I try to myself, to get away from doing all this whenever I can. I play in a band, right? So I put everything away, and now I go become the guitar player in Trial of Ascension, right? I put this away, and I become this person over here. Or I go to the gym and I got a workout partner, right? That's me there, and I'm trying to make separations there instead of becoming, hey, Rolo all the time, God forbid I get recognized in Reno, Nevada, or Las Vegas, or like Miami or something like that, because then I have to be Rolo all of a sudden. And I have to make the separation between man and brand. And I think that's becoming even more and more difficult for guys to do these days. That's why I do shows like yours, like you. I mean, I don't know what your sub count is or anything like that. I'm happy to work with like guys who are like that. We're just starting out. We only got 100 subs. Fine, let's do it. Yo, and that makes you so.
It keeps me humble, but it also keeps me me.
I think that's so dope, man. Because when people reach a certain caliber like you, they tend to shy off individuals like me that's on the come up, Mm-hmm. And man, I commend you for
unless you got a million followers. Yeah, well, unless you can build their brand. Now, here's why. Like, I don't even know what your sub count is. You hit me up on Instagram because you follow me, and I think I followed you back or something because I was watching. I go, oh, this guy's interesting, right? And like, oh well, he doesn't. I don't know what your count is on Instagram. Honestly, I don't care. I want to have what I care about is having an interesting conversation, because when I have conversations, whether it's with a guy who's got like 10 million subs or 100 subs, if I learn something new in the process of having that conversation, that's worth it to me. So and I think it should be worth it to a lot of other people, because you'll end up isolating yourself, or you'll end up having the only people you care about are the people who can like serve your brand. And I'm not into that. I want people who can serve my educational needs,
Right.
If you've ever been, I don't know if you do martial arts, but like one of the things that your sensei will, I don't know, whatever martial art you practice, but like whatever your sensei will sometimes say this, even a black belt can learn something from a white belt, right? Because there might be something that white belt kid can teach you. Like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like you're sparring a black belt with a white belt. You're going to kill the kid, right? But like maybe the kid does something that's unexpected, and you go, oh, that. And so even then, a white belt can teach a black belt something. And that's why I kind of try to apply that to pretty much all my learning, but also when it comes to developing a brand or being who I am online, and starting a YouTube channel.
Man, that's Yo, that's so dope. I wish more celebs and content creators had that
Me
same
too.
ideology, man. Because some of them, not all, but some. You know what I mean? It'd be kind of hard to, finagle the bagel with them, you know. But yo, I appreciate you so much. My next question for you is I seen you conversing with PBD Network.
Patrick Bet David, yeah, Valuetainment.
Yeah, and you was informing him about how this guy was reading the book. His girl took the book. No, no, no. She read the title on your first book, Rational Male. She took it, read it, came back, threw it back at him. Was like, "Yo, he's everything he says in his book is correct,"
Right.
and that you need to stay away from that
Yeah,
kind of
and you shouldn't
information.
know any of
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yo,
yeah.
here's the thing, right? I notice a lot of times when, somebody like you or Myron kind of like exposed evil female nature. I call it evil female nature because some of the moves that they be making is kind of heartless. But anyway, like they have a hard time admitting that the things you expound on are true. Why is that? And give me the breakdown on that, Rolo.
Okay, so just the quote that you're talking about. Actually, I think I put that in the introduction of the second book. Even I had a guy, his girlfriend read my first book, and she was just like kind of nonchalantly, reading it, and she's like, "The rational male, give me that." I'll decide if this guy's full of shit. And so she read. She took like about a week to read it, and she comes back to him on Friday and tosses it back in his lap, and she says, "Everything in that book is true, and you shouldn't know any of it." and so there's this I don't know, acknowledgement of like what I talk about, and I don't want to just say it's all about me, but like there's other people too, like in this sphere, and like like people who are unfamiliar or uninitiated with the manosphere or the male self-improvement sphere or whatever the hell we're calling it right now. They will take it and they don't want to believe it first because they kind of have to go through a process of like really understanding it, like assuming they have the curiosity to actually want to read the book in the first place. But then the reason why it seems kind of like dangerous is because it gives up the game. And that's what I think I think the source or the root of a lot of the hate that I get, and not really so much from women as much as it is men, but like from women, it's I'm giving guys the hack, right? Or I'm giving them the keys to the castle.
The
I'm
cheat
giving
code. They're getting the cheat code,
right?
man.
The game on God mode, right? And so there, even if it's whether it's of course what they want to do is they want to say the first thing I do is disqualify it. No, this is bullshit. I would never want to get with a guy like this. But statistically speaking, you do. Women all do. But you wouldn't because you're a special snowflake, right? And so you have those conversations, but you're never going to get the straight answer because it's not in women's best interest to cop to it. Like
Right,
guys,
they want them to remain sleep. I mean,
guys will ask me like, "Hey, Rolo," they go, "Hey, Rolo, do you think women can be red pill?" I go, "All women are already red pill." I said, "The trick is getting them to admit it." I said, "They already know."
You just said, man, you just dropped a serious jewel on us, man.
They just don't.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't want guys to, they don't want to, because, and here's why. Because rationality or objectively analyzing this stuff doesn't taste good because women want to play the game. They don't want to be told that they're playing a game. So when you expose it and you say, see, here's what's going on. You're doing this and you're doing that. When the game is exposed to them, then it's no longer fun to play. So there's it's a psychological concept, but it's called the observer effect. Observing a process changes the process. So if you're in an experiment and you're in an experiment, you're going to behave differently because you're in an experiment. You know that the cameras are on you, right? So it's what's called the observer effect. So observing the process changes the process. That's why, like research scientists of all stripes, so it doesn't matter if it's psychology or whatever, if they're doing field work, one of the most important aspects of field work is to make sure that your subjects don't know that you're there, so that you can see what's going on, and so you can sort of analyze behavior or analyze whatever's going on at that time. Because otherwise, people won't act like naturally. They won't act in an organic way. So you have to like sort of set yourself aside and sort of be a student of life and be a good, keen observer of like, a people watcher, basically. And so what happens is, and the reason for that is because once you do, you give up the game, and then you're talking about the game and you're explaining the game rather than playing the game, because you'll never understand how to play the game if you're always under observation. That's why women don't like it when they read my book, or I do a video and I talk about something like, an alpha widow, or I talk about like, the epiphany phase, or I talk about something, anything in my book that's sort of like analytical, that sort of gives away the game. And that's what women like kind of bristle at. It's not even so much me as it is, you're talking about stuff that I would rather you not talk about because it puts me at a disadvantage. Whereas I'm trying to sort of equip men with the education and the knowledge that they need to have of men's nature and women's nature so that they can actually play the game better. Everybody thinks like I'm like Mr. Wizard. I'm like very much this analytical, empirical, like rational, super, evil genius or something. I think that guys should also very much develop a game, but that game has to be developed around knowledge, but it also has to be played with emotion. So you have to have emotional intelligence as well as like sort of, book knowledge as well, so that you can play the game more effectively. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to be always about women. It could be in your family. It could be at church. It can be with your coworkers. It can be, you can get out of a speeding ticket with good game if you know enough about human nature. So it's not just about like getting your dick wet. It's also about like dealing with other people. And so when I talk about things in an analytical perspective, it really turns women off because they want to punch me in the face because I'm like Mr. Spreadsheet guy. And I'm telling them, here's why you do what you do. I'm like, oh, you're right, but you shouldn't be saying that. Everything in this book is correct, and men shouldn't know this. Well, the reason why you shouldn't know it is because it puts women at a disadvantage, and they're not playing the game. They're actually just sort of like, going through the motions, and it's not fun.
Here's my perspective on females on the side of the game. I feel like when they playing this game, man, they on easy mode all straight through, man. Until that beauty fades out. Well,
we live in a gynocentric, like you were asking me before, like a matriarchy or whatever. I think we live in a gynocentric social order, and to maintain that and to sustain that, we can't give away the game. We can't talk about it. That's you want to know why Andrew Tate. Well, the contextual reason why Andrew Tate got canceled is because he was giving away the game. You can't. You should. Everything he says is true, and you shouldn't know any of it. So canceled. That's it was. I feel bad because I'm good friends with. I was actually just talking to Andrew like before I went on and did my first show today.
Okay.
And, I was talking to him, and it's like he got the double whammy or the triple whammy, I think, because not only did he game the system, he also was a perfect target because he's easy to hate and he's easy to cancel because he's a misogynist. Well, he's not, but you just don't want him talking about this because it gives away the game.
Man, I mean, hey, you know what? My next question to you is the alpha widow. Like, do you think she has the ability?
This got to be the last question because I only had an hour, but I'll do this last one for you. So go ahead.
All right. Yeah, this last one. Yeah. The alpha widow, right? Do you think she has the capability of pair bonding with one individual? The reason why I ask you that because I have a concept on the concept of the idea of an alpha widow where she has a sexual imprint that deals with the alpha she used to deal with back in the day. Like, What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. Again, this goes back to why is it important for men to be concerned with female promiscuity? Okay, the reason why guys are concerned with promiscuity is because they want to ensure paternity. They want to make sure that the baby is theirs. That's why we have terms like slut. That's why we have terms like, she's for the streets, right? That's why we have all those, cutesy references to remind us really that she's a bad bet for our paternity because you'll never know if the kid is actually yours or not. So how does that affect like the alpha widow dynamic? Well, the problem, I coined the alpha widow dynamic back in 2009, I want to say. And so it goes like this: is the more partners a woman has in her sexual past, the more the potential pool of guys one of those guys could be like the guy who left her with the most alpha impression. So the fewer she has, the lower the likelihood is that she's going to be attached, like really sort of imprinted, psychologically attached to one of them. If like I put it this way, I say, you know, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a woman who had 10 partners and none of them were really all that alpha and you're the most alpha dude she's ever been with? Or would you rather have a girl who's got like 2 or 3 partners, but one of those guys was like, he was famous. He was Drake, right? He was like the guy that she just can't ever get over because he was just so alpha and he left such an impression. Which one is worthwhile and which one's not? And I would argue the one who has the 2 or 3, because she's always going to be pining for her alpha widow. She's a widow from that alpha that she couldn't lock down. Now, practically, statistically speaking, a woman with 10 partners is more likely to have one of those guys in that 10 to be Drake, like to be the guy that she can't get over. So statistically speaking, that's the way it is, but it's not really about numbers so much as it is about alpha impressions. And what happens is then women start to think, is this guy the best I can do? So she settles on you, number 11, but she's got like number 5 left the most alpha impression upon her, and she's just hasn't been able to replicate that, and she can't do it in you. And she's constantly thinking about him, or maybe she's connecting with him on Instagram or on Facebook, or trying to like see if she can rekindle something on the side, but she's still with you just in case that doesn't work out. And that's one scenario. But essentially what it is it's women who have such high expectations, or that expectation was set by another dude, that you will never measure up to either the fantasy, like Jason Momoa, right? The fantasy of a guy that she thinks she deserves, or the guy she's had in her past who is better than you that she just can't get with because she wasn't able to lock him down, or she's not hot enough to do it anymore, or she's too old or whatever. That sort of colors your relationship with that woman going forward. So that's really kind of like the alpha widow aspect of things. So what it is the guy she pines for and she can't get over. But the reason for that, of course, is because, or the reason that's more prevalent today, I should say, is because we have opened the floodgates and we've unfettered hypergamy, meaning that women can now have. So it's socially acceptable for a woman to be promiscuous and have, you know, a double digit, triple digit notch count. And we're supposed to ignore that. Well, we can only ignore that up until a point where it infringes or it impacts our relationship with that woman in the long term, whether she's our wife or the mother of our children. So I always put it this way. There is a trend, let's say. I'm talking, women hate it when I bring this up too. There's a trend for women to name their sons after their boyfriend they couldn't get over. And so it's like, oh, if the guy's name was like Dave, and she says, oh, I want to name the baby Dave. And then you're just this sort of beta male guy who goes, oh, okay, sounds great, right? And then like 3 years, 4 years down the line, when you want her sister or somebody she knew in college says, hey, wasn't Dave that guy that you used to fuck in the spring break in Cancun? Like that. Suddenly they realize it. They've got to rationalize it. So, that's what I tell you, like psychologically speaking, there's probably some sort of like Freudian Jungian thing that, you know, they feel like they couldn't lock the guy down, but they want to commemorate the memory of that guy in their son. So every time they call their son or they talk to their son, they use the alpha widow guy's name when they call their son. So, and it's really fucked up from an ethical perspective, I think. Yeah, but it's a phenomenon nonetheless. And it's something I think that guys need to be educated on and they need to be aware of, because if you're going to get into a long-term relationship with a woman, you have to cover all your bases, man. You got to cover all the numbers and realize that that's a possibility. And if it is a possibility, what are you going to do about it? So again, it's not meant to tell guys, hey, look, this is what's going to happen. You're doomed. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying be aware of that so that you can make a better decision when it comes time to say, do I want to get with this girl in the long term? Well, that might be something you use, or it might be something that you're thinking about when you're vetting that woman for a long-term relationship. And yet another reason why they don't want me talking about it.
Man, yo, hey, Rolo, man.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming through, man.
Sure.
Salute to you, man, and thanks to Elena's $5 super chat. That's the second super chat you put in there, man. Salute to you, Elena. You know what I mean, beret. You know what I mean, appreciate that. Any last words you want to give to the people?
No, I mean, I'm always happy to do to
Get
help,
that book.
to help new guys. Yeah, you can find all my books on Amazon if this is your first time like listening to me. And then also, I should point out that on Friday on my channel, I'm doing Access Vegas with Mike Sartain. We're doing that panel show I mentioned earlier. That's coming up at 10 p.m. Pacific, so it'll be 1 a.m. Eastern time on Friday night. Well, I guess Saturday morning, really, but in Pacific time it'll be 10 p.m. It's a panel show. It's myself, Mike Sartain, and we got 4 other women on there that we're going to have a panel discussion. That's my new project that I'm working on in Vegas, and I got some other stuff coming up as well. But do check that out, and then of course you can find all my books on Amazon. Just type in The Rational Male or Rolo Tomasi, and I'll come up.
Word up. Yo, thank you again, Rolo.
Sure.
Boy Russ, this interview is over. Seek wisdom, practice humility, and remain sucker free. I'm out. Later, Rolo. Just hit me up on the, you know what I mean?
All right. See you guys.
All
Bye.
right. Peace.